You should always be wary of so-called ordinary days. It is at such moments that you can be taken by surprise, receive an unexpected blow, or be knocked down. Just like the old saying that quiet people are the ones to avoid, as they are usually the wildest at heart. Well, both of these pieces of wisdom come from me, Allan Webb. I married my high school sweetheart Ellie almost immediately after we both graduated from university and got good jobs. I became a teacher at the local primary school, and Ellie became a head nurse at the local private hospital. Good jobs with prospects and stability. With a guaranteed income, the banks didn't hesitate to give us the money for our first home. Soon we had children. James, now 14, and Elaine, now 19, were our pride. They seemed to be on their way to a bright future. They had a group of close friends, good grades, and fought with each other enough to give Ellie and I many moments of quiet fun at their antics. The relationship between Ellie and I, although not extremely passionate, was stable. We argue sometimes, mostly about the children. She always seemed very protective of them, and had difficulty agreeing with my decisions on various issues that inevitably arise when raising two children. She argued up to a certain point, and then fell silent and quickly changed topic. This has become the norm. Our sex life was acceptable. We had sex 2 to 3 times a week, usually on the weekends when she was more ready. I wish this happened more often during the week, but Ellie always made an excuse. I soon learned that it was better to take what I had and leave it for the weekend. We just fell into our routine and left it at that. Besides, I shouldn't complain. Ellie, to me, was incredibly beautiful, and we had 2 wonderful children to raise. The thread of peaceful existence began to unravel on Thursday. It was lunchtime in the staff room. I taught at an elementary school, but it was attached to a large high school campus. This meant that the elementary school teachers met and ate in the common staff room with the high school teachers, many of whom I became friends with. During this lunch, one of the few that I could spend without being on playground duty or grading a stack of papers, Pat Collins, the science department chair at my high school, approached me with a project. Hello, well, can you help my team of 12th graders test a cool new device? Always helpful, but wary of possible jokes, I replied, of course, Pat. Are you measuring the size of a human brain and want to calibrate the machine for the largest one first? He laughed. No, nothing so simple. We were given a simple DNA testing device to rent from the university. It is intended for this command 12th graders who have been selected by their scouts for fast-track entry into the university's science course next year. We are quite privileged as this is the first time this has happened as far as I know. Okay, I replied, but why do you need my help? This situation intrigued me. Well, we need test subjects for DNA analysis. For child safety reasons, we are unable to employ any students or staff here. We need random subjects that the team or university can't track. Do you think you can help? You can't tell me who these subjects are, but one of them must be related to the parent and the other must not. A team of students will have to determine, using DNA analysis, which of them is which. I could use my own kids, but I might accidentally give clues to students. All that is needed is 3 strands of hair, one from the parent, one from the tied child, and one from the untied one. Are you in? He looked at me expectantly as I hesitated. You will be doing these students a huge favor. Opportunities like this don't come along every day. Why not? I answered. I already knew that I would use my own children as test subjects, but I wasn't going to say it Pete. He gave me special containers that ensured there was no cross-contamination of the samples. Why are you giving me 6 containers? I asked. In case you mess up any of the samples, he replied. Understood. It's like elementary school teachers don't know anything, right? I answered. It was a constant exchange of jokes between 2 good friends. Thursday evening was the ideal time to collect samples. Ellie was not at home because she had a late shift. I could only imagine how she would react to her children being part of a science experiment. Elaine also had a friend over for the night. She was Elaine's longtime friend, Patsy Jefferson. We knew her parents, John and Shelley, from university and saw them often. I enjoyed being around Shelley as she was an open and kind-hearted woman. Her husband John, although normal and talkative, always seemed a little withdrawn. I often caught him looking at me strangely. It was a look I couldn't quite explain, but there was something smug about it. It was as if he knew something that I didn't. But, people are different, and Ellie liked to be around them. Collecting my hair was easier than I thought. Apparently mine was the simplest, and taking a strand of Elaine's hair was as easy as walking into the bathroom and pulling out one of the combs in her cabinet. We each had our own bathroom cabinet, and Elaine always used her own hairbrush, as did Ellie. Patsy's hair fell into my hands by pure chance. The girls were fooling around in the living room during a study break when Patsy fell near the dining table and caught her shoulder-length hair on one of the chairs. Elaine was rolling on the floor laughing while Patsy tried to untangle her hair from all corners of the chair. In the end, she succeeded, but there were a few small tufts of her hair left on the chair. Bingo, sample number 3 is ready. Now I went to James' room and picked one of his hairs from the pillow. Of course, he didn't know what I was doing, since at that time he was listening to music in the living room. I now had 4 samples. Mine, 2 related samples from Elaine and James, and 1 unrelated sample from Patsy. I still had 2 empty containers left, and hadn't ruined the rest of the samples, so for fun I included one of Ellie's hairs, again from her brush. This should be interesting. I signed everything very scientifically, a E, and wrote down which one was whose. A was mine, B and C were Elaine and James, D was Patsy, and E was Ellie. I couldn't wait for the results. This will certainly test the team's accuracy and give them valuable diagnostic experience before entering the university. Naturally, I handed over the samples to Pete the next day. He was surprised by the additional 2 samples, but noted that it would make the testing more realistic. Since it was Friday, I didn't expect results soon, so I continued with my normal routine the following week. Back in the staff room, Pat approached me. "Hi, Al. The team got the results. They are delighted. The university mentors were very impressed with how they carried out the experiment and how the DNA instrument performed in relatively inexperienced hands. I can say that this team of students has a bright future in science next year. It was a good move to give them 5 samples. This really presented them with a need. Anyway, here's a report on the results. It arrived, but thanks again." I waited until I got home to open the brown envelope because I had the whole day to prepare for 6th grade. The report was quite simple. He first described in detail the method used to determine the DNA sequences of each sample. This was followed by a simple table illustrating the family relationships between the samples. It was like this. Is not related to any of the other samples. E refers to samples B and C. D refers to samples B and C. E is not related to sample D. They then stated that the results had been thoroughly tested by the university's DNA laboratory and that the likelihood of error was extremely low. This was followed by praise for the way the Year 12 students carried out the task and congratulations on the high degree of accuracy they were able to achieve. In fact, the letter said, "The results are absolutely correct in all respects." It didn't hit me until I reread the report. My hands began to shake as the implications of the results hit me like a 6. Yes, the king struck from behind. This meant that I, sample A, was not related to my own children, samples B and C. This can't be true. I was their father, but Ellie was their relative. What about Patsy? How could she be related to Elaine and James? The truth of these results was too great to bear. My mind went into overdrive, flitting from one thought to another, unwilling to dwell on one certain fact. I had been cuckolded my entire married life. "No, no, no, Ellie, no!" I screamed at the empty house. Luckily, no one was home yet. This empty house suddenly seemed to close in around me as I spun around and landed on the kitchen floor. Dad, are you okay? What happened?" It was Elaine's voice that attacked my dead brain and woke me up. "I think so," I muttered. My eyes were still half closed, and all I could see was a blurry image of my daughter's clearly upset face. My daughter, Elaine, or was she? Once again, the terrible realization surfaced, and I sat up and shook my head to clear away the drowsiness. Running my hand through my hair, I felt a lump where my skull had softened its fall to the floor. Oh, Elaine was there again in a flash with a rag and ice and cool water. I mumbled my thanks as I sipped the water and pressed the ice against the wound. "Sorry," I said. "I don't know what happened. I was just reading this report, and the next thing I knew, you were calling my name. I must have slipped or something. I think I'll be fine in a minute. I'll go downstairs to the office and rest a little. James and your mother will be home soon. Do you think you can watch dinner?" "Of course, Dad," came Elaine's response. "You know, you certainly scared me. I thought you had a heart attack or something. My next class was supposed to be CPR. All of the physical education at school suddenly made sense," she chuckled. "I love you. Now go and rest." These words hit my heart harder than a heart attack. Elaine was my daughter, but she wasn't. I loved her very much, and she loved me like her father. Only I wasn't her father. I was just a dumbass who paid for her education, held her while she cried, listened to her crazy teenage whining and tantrums, changed her diapers in the middle of the night, kissed her on the cheek every morning when she left for school. I was not her father. The DNA test slapped me in the face, but the injury I received was not a black eye, but a broken heart. The living room chair cushioned my descent as I sank down to sit and think. Sit and think. Think about what? Think about how Ellie cheated on me not once, but twice. If twice, how many more times? There were years between the two obvious deceptions, so what happened in between, before or after? What now? Is this still happening now? How could Ellie do this? She was my wife, my love, my partner. We did everything together. Others often commented on what a great partnership we had or seemed to have. We almost didn't quarrel. We always had sex when we had the chance, although now that we were getting older, it was always on the weekends. In addition, teenage children do not allow themselves much freedom to make noise as much as they want. How? I accidentally said this word out loud several times while I was sitting there. I didn't notice Elaine coming down to my office with a cup of coffee. "I don't know about Dad either," she said, thinking that the question was for her. "I didn't see anything you could trip on, and the floor is dry, so you didn't slip on anything. I found this, by the way. You must have read this as you walked into the kitchen. Something like a scientific report. Dad, you should really take notes while sitting at your desk." With this curse, she handed me my coffee, God bless her, and the crumpled report, damn it. "Thanks, Lainey," I replied, calling her by my pet name when she scolded me for something. She smiled and left the room to continue dinner. I really needed to pull myself together to apply some logic to this situation and check what was what. If I had continued like this and made some mistake, I would have already ruined my relationship with Ellie and the children. My children. Ellie clearly cheated on me with John Jefferson. Not once, but at least twice. My hands began to tremble. I went there again. I needed to immediately control my emotions and outward behavior. Luckily, as a teacher, I'm used to doing both, especially when dealing with the OMG, this is amazing parents who send their kids to my classes every year. I was able to pull it apart by the time I finished my coffee and the ice started dripping onto my face, just in time for James and Ellie to walk through the door. "Are you okay, Dad?" asked James. "How are you, old man? Maybe we should buy a wheelchair," he joked when he came to examine the wound on his head. "That must hurt," he joked again as he walked off to his room. "What happened, Al?" Ellie asked, examining the wound from a purely medical point of view. No stitches are needed, but this ice will have to stay there for a while. What was Elaine thinking using one of my nice tea towels for this? I'll be back in a minute with a new rag and new ice." With that, she flew out and got to work on the new bandage. I was proud of myself. However, I kept myself under control. Every time she touched and felt the wound, I could not help but recoil slightly, not from pain, but from the betrayal that now seemed obvious to me. Of course, Ellie thought it was from pain. "Come for dinner. I need a shower." Elaine was busy cooking up a storm for her poor wounded father. She was laughing. I didn't laugh as I walked up the stairs and sat down at the table with my family. My family? HM. This lie now poisoned every thought. I almost lost control. Fortunately, everyone attributed my strange behavior to a recent fall and joked about it. Later, as I headed to bed, I realized that I had survived my first day of lying. I can do that. As a teacher, I had several days a year that could be used as sick days. Due to the high stress of teaching, these days could also be used as mental health days. The benefits of working in a trade union organization. I decided to meet with the elementary school principal and negotiate a week off. She knew my track record and instinctively knew that my request was related to something serious. This is a little unexpected, Al. Is there something I should know about? She looked at me expectantly. I wouldn't like to talk just yet, boss. I just need some time alone at home to deal with some serious issues. In my current state, I will not be able to benefit my students. Calm down, Al. I know your work ethic, and I know you're not just asking for this. I hope your time will be productive for you. Now go. I'll arrange a replacement for your week. Just leave all plans for this period on your desk for the substitute teacher. This weekend was unreal. I kept up normal conversations around the house, but tried to spend as much time as possible away from Ellie, pretending to do one-yard job after another that simply needed to be done. The most difficult meals were the meals. It was a time of light family conversations, and I had to really focus on my participation in these conversations. I just couldn't look Ellie in the eye. I faked a smile every now and then and carried on. My heart broke over and over again as I watched and listened to James and Elaine. Night was the easy way out as I went to bed early, making excuses for all the yard work and fall recovery. Ellie didn't seem bothered by my lack of interest in sex this weekend, and maybe it was my paranoia, but it seemed like she was trying to hide her sigh of relief. On Monday morning, I followed my usual work routine. Ellie had a week of day shifts, so she left during my normal school hours. James went to school as usual, and Elaine had a full week at university. Technically, I was supposed to be at school too, and the rest of the family was going about their normal routines. Perfect. I had the freedom to investigate whatever was needed. My logical teacher's brain took over, and I soon made a list of things that needed to be checked. 1. Check Ellie's personal belongings for anything that could give me answers to the questions of who, when, where, why. 2. Check Ellie's movements at work. If something happened, it had to be at her work. She never had a hen party or any social events outside the home. 3. Buy a tracker for Ellie's car. 4. Check John Jefferson's movements. 5. Meet with a lawyer and find out my options. Point 1 was relatively easy, since I had the whole house to myself. I searched everything thoroughly. Ellie's wardrobe, bedside table, even the attic. I didn't find anything incriminating. There was one strange remark. One of the photo albums in the living room had clearly been taken out and put back in its place often. I noticed this as I sat defeated in my usual chair, sipping my coffee and wondering where else I could look. Out of curiosity, I took this album off the shelf. Nobody looked at the photo albums anymore, so I was glad to find out why this one was opened so often. I was shocked by the content of this album. It was almost John's temple. There were photographs of him at university, even some of them with Ellie in rather intimate poses, apparently while still studying. Okay, college is a wild time for most developing adults, but keeping photographic evidence, I thought. I also remember that we promised to be exclusive in our courtship at university. Something was wrong. There were pictures of him and Elaine when she was a baby. The most disturbing part was the photo of him, Ellie and Elaine in the hospital shortly after she was born. Happy family photo. This sequence continued chronologically with similar photographs, including James. More happy family photos followed at different locations. I noticed that they were mostly taken in places we visited together, so the photos must have been taken while I was distracted by something else. I don't remember any photographs being taken while I was in sight or hearing. The photos were clearly not posted on the kitchen table after the events for everyone to see. The photographs, while not taken in familiar social situations, All appeared to have been taken in one of the local hospital areas. Ellie was almost always in her work clothes, but there were a few where she was wearing a very revealing dress. Normally, this would be a source of pride for me. Ellie always looked stunning and, when she dressed carefully, could attract the attention of any man, even now. However, I didn't feel any pride, just a feeling of complete betrayal. She didn't dress up for me. She impressed John. Damn John. Now I could understand those hidden glances and sly smiles when we met in company. I could almost hear John's thoughts. That poor stupid fool. He doesn't even know that Ellie and I are having sex. He doesn't even know about our two loved children. My mind went into another world at that moment, almost as if I was in a movie. Nothing I took for granted was real. No marriage, no children, no family. It's amazing how quickly love for that special someone can turn into hate. This is exactly what happened in that alternate world. I knew I could easily despair and curl up and die, but I knew I wouldn't do that. I had plans. This photo album opened the well of my love for Ellie. All the love poured out onto the living room floor. I copied all the photos onto my scanner and created a folder on my computer with a password to store everything I found. Time to move on to the second item on the list. It was 11 o'clock, and I knew that Ellie had lunch break every day at 12. I had enough time to get to her hospital and check out what she was doing. I brought my camera with a telephoto lens just in case. Parking was easy at this time of day, and I was very lucky to find a spot near the rear entrance to the parking lot. It was out of sight from the main entrance of the hospital, but allowed me to observe the entrance. At 5 minutes to 12, I saw John enter the hospital. He walked in confidently, as if he had done this many times. At just over 12, Ellie left the hospital. Nothing special, except that she was on John's arm. At that moment, my love for Ellie returned in the form of extreme rage. I almost automatically started taking pictures of the couple, leaving the hospital and heading towards Ellie's car, which luckily wasn't next to mine. They kissed as they got into the car, and Ellie drove off. I followed them at a safe distance. They didn't expect anyone to follow them, so there were no sudden turns or glances. The car stopped at a hotel near the hospital. This was one of the establishments serving mainly hospital patients and their relatives coming from other cities. They almost ran out of the car and entered the reception area, where, apparently, they could go straight to their room. The administrator simply waved at them, handing them the key. Once they had disappeared into the elevator, I walked into the reception area and pretended to look around while I casually commented to the receptionist that the last couple seemed to be in a hurry. Her answer shocked me to the core, to such an extent that I almost lost my temper and screamed obscenity to the whole world. She replied, "Oh yes, they are regular guests here. 4 times a week, they take a number and order takeout. Isn't it cute that couples are still doing this, even after all these years?" My mind interrupted her story. "Spouses? She's married to me." The manager's voice continued, "I've been working here for 15 years, and this happens every week. From Monday to Thursday, like clockwork. Even when Elsie was pregnant, she and James came here. They usually stay for an hour and a half each time. It's strange that they never come during school holidays. Do you want a number?" No thanks. I was simply looking for places where my company could accommodate visiting representatives. Thank you." I stumbled and returned to the car. Sure enough, a little over an hour later, the couple lazily returned to the car, both eating sandwiches. My camera again captured the evidence. I could barely restrain myself from jumping out of the car and killing that bastard and her. That's exactly how I thought about them both now. They drove off while I sat stunned in the motel parking lot. The receptionist noticed me and waved sweetly. She must have been on her lunch break. I think she was being kind to a potential future client. She came up to me and asked if I had any more questions about the hotel's services. I politely shook my head, thanked her, and left. When I got home, I added the photos to my folder and moved on to the next item on my list. And it was only Monday. I found a small, discreet GPS tracker online that was sold at a local store. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon, so I had enough time to buy it and return home by the usual time. $200 later, I had a tracker and a small instruction manual. Home by 4:30 and at the table, pretending to check my notebooks, when Elaine burst through the door. "Hello, Father. I'm home. I hope there are no accidents today." She laughed and disappeared into her room. The usual afternoon routine began. James arrived at about 4, along with Ellie, who headed to the shower in her bathroom. I was preparing dinner by 5, finished by 6, and we were all sitting at the table by 6:30. The conversation at the table was normal light family conversations, rumors and small talk, until it was time to leave for business. Ellie seemed like herself. I think she followed her changing routine for so long that it was part of a normal day for her. No signs of secret guilt or remorse for betrayal. I went to bed early, pretending to be really tired from a particularly difficult class this year. My family knew about these moments and were not surprised by my early departure. The night was restless, and the next morning I got up early. I perked up with coffee and washed my face, then installed the tracker in Ellie's car and set up the application on my computer. After calibrating the settings, I cooked breakfast and got ready for a normal work day. By 9 o'clock, I was alone again to continue completing my list. The tracker will simply confirm Ellie's movements and act as proof of her trips from the hospital. I didn't need to check John's movements since I already knew what he and Ellie were doing, so point 5. Searching local divorce lawyers on Google was an eye-opener. Screen after screen. I picked one at random and called to see if I could make an appointment today. At 11 o'clock, I sat nervously in a small reception area with a conservatively dressed secretary typing on a keyboard. He called me at 11:15 and led me into an office that could be described as a relic of the past, with polished wood and ceiling high shelves lined with leather-bound books. The smell was incredible. The room simply oozed knowledge and history. "Hello, Mr. Webb. Can I call you Al?" And without waiting for an answer, she continued. "My name is Jane Lober, a divorce lawyer. How can I help you, Al?" I collected my thoughts and blurted out everything that had happened in the last few days. I didn't realize it right away, but tears were streaming down my face uncontrollably. This was the first time I voiced what was happening to me. The first time I talked about this with someone. Jane handed me a lot of napkins, which she always had on hand while she took notes, occasionally saying, or okay, as I unloaded my story. After I finished, there was an awkward pause. I wiped my nose while Jane reread her notes. "Well, Al, incredible story. Do you have proof of all this?" Jane looked at me questioningly over her glasses. I listed the photographic evidence I had. I didn't tell Jane about the GPS tracker for fear that she would say it was illegal and couldn't be used in court. "Okay," said Jane. "It is obvious that you have grounds to sue John for compensation for child support for all these years. You can also sue him for alienation of affection, but you'll have to prove that he somehow forced Ellie into the relationship. Judging by your story, this is unlikely. As far as you and Ellie are concerned, divorce seems inevitable. However, you must understand that according to the law, infidelity is not illegal. The vows you made at your wedding are not legally binding. If you get divorced, you will be treated as equal partners. Your wife's infidelity will not affect the financial outcome of the division of property. Now, since you both work and your incomes are approximately equal, child support requirements will be neutralized. Elaine is already 19 years old and is not included in the calculation. James is another matter, and it will depend on how the housing conditions are resolved, how this will affect the financial side. The cost of the house will be divided 70-30 in favor of the parent with whom James will live. Any cash and other assets will be divided according to the court order. This is not an easy process. Are you sure you want to go this route? She looked at me again over her glasses. I remembered everything I had learned in the last few days. The DNA results, the photo album, the hotel. "Yes, definitely," I answered. "Fine. I will prepare the necessary documents and be ready to sign by Thursday. After signing, all that remains is to decide when to notify Ellie and John. Send all financial documents listed in this brochure by fax, SMS, or email to my secretary. See you Thursday, Al. Don't do anything stupid or illegal, and we'll start the process." She stood up and pointed to the door. Before I knew it, I was back in the waiting room, looking at 3 other nervous people. At least I'm not alone, I thought then. I was desperately alone in this. Who could I trust? Ellie? She has always been my confidante during difficult times. Elaine? James? How could I so cruelly undermine their faith and trust? It will hurt them as much, if not more, than it will hurt me. What about John's family? Patsy and her mum Shelley would be devastated to learn about Ellie and John's dating life. Doubts began to undermine my previous resolve. Can I really hurt that many people? If I didn't do anything, I would be the only one who would suffer. Can I live with this? I wandered home and again found myself in the den, deep in thought. To act or not to act? That is the question. I smiled miserably at the Shakespeare reference. There was no particular value in happiness in this whole situation. I needed a drink. I'm not usually one to drink alone, so I found the company of a large glass of red wine strangely comforting. Was a bottle of wine the only consolation I could get? It was a downward spiral, and I knew it. I put the bottle back, but left the glass. It took me 2 hours, 3 hours to be exact, to finish my glass of wine and decide what to do. I hid my foray into drinking alone and started dinner before the day's arrivals began. Ellie, with her usual cheerful greeting, rushes to her room to take a shower, followed by James and Ellie. "James, don't leave your school bag in my car, please," Ellie shouted, heading towards our bathroom. Certainly, I thought. Ellie always showers as soon as she gets home from work. Her excuse was that she didn't want to spread the nasty bugs from the hospital to us poor innocent family members. Now I knew for sure that this was done in order to hide any evidence of their sexual sessions, and the name James. That's the name John used at the hotel. These revelations only strengthened my resolve even further. I knew what I needed to do. The next morning I got up early. I went straight to Ellie's car and took apart the GPS tracker. I don't need this anymore. Yesterday's findings showed Ellie was following the same scam pattern. I also tinkered with the car's electrical system, so I knew it wouldn't start. Soon after, I returned to the kitchen, prepared breakfast as usual, and followed my usual morning routine. "Come on, James," Ellie shouted. "It's time for us to go. I need to get to work on time." My thoughts slipped away. "You mean you are going to meet your second husband?" I thought sadly. They both disappeared into the garage as usual, but for mysterious reasons the car wouldn't start. "Al, the car won't start. Can you come and have a look, please?" Ellie begged. I went downstairs, taking my time. I lifted the hood and pretended I'm prodding various cables while telling Ellie, "Try it now," or "What about now?" "Sorry, Val. Looks like it's the bus for you and James today. I could drive you, but I have a staff meeting before school today," I lied. Ellie wasn't happy, but she knew that if she didn't start the 5-minute walk to the bus stop now, she'd have to wait another 30 minutes. James wasn't impressed either. Taking the bus to school was not cool at all. At least the bus stopped right next to both stops, so the other end of the journey would be relatively painless. They walked away grumbling. James because of the uncool way to get to school, and Ellie, without saying anything, was probably thinking about skipping her usual cheating sex with the asshole. How could they go to their love shack if Ellie didn't have their car? Well, it sucks to be her, I thought. I went back inside, saw Elaine off, and cleaned up. I had someone to see. Shelley was extremely surprised to see that it was me who rang the doorbell at 9:30. "Al, what a surprise. Shouldn't you be at school?" Then she laughed at what she had just said. "Listen to me. I sound like a school mom checking on a teenager's truancy. Sorry, come in." "Where's Ellie?" She was very embarrassed by the whole visit, but was very kind. We went to the back of the house where our families had spent time enjoying barbecues and drinks many times. "Would you like some coffee?" she asked when I sat down on the chaise longue. "Of course, thank you." She soon reappeared with 2 steaming mugs and placed them on the small table between our chairs. "Now, Al, admit it. Why are you here on a school day and without Ellie? She could tell things weren't going well. Women and their intuition. Shelley, what I'm about to say is not pretty. I thought long and hard about whether I should even tell you anything, but you know me. I believe I'm doing the right thing. Shelley grew paler as I spoke, but to her credit, she did not interrupt. I won't sugarcoat what I have to say, Shelley, so here it is. I talked about what I learned, how I learned about the current relationship between Ellie and John. She suddenly stopped and waved her arms, wailing and crying. She must have felt very embarrassed by this as she stood up and disappeared into the house. She soon reappeared with a huge box of tissues, 2 bottles of red wine, and 2 large glasses. Fuck the coffee, Al. I need it. Another bottle for you, but if you don't drink it, I will. Your choice. I took a glass and filled hers and mine with the red liquid. Now tell me again what those bastards did. Again, I detailed what I knew. That's all, she whispered. The lying, cheating bastard is toast. The divorce papers will be ready today. She entered the house again, and I saw her calling someone. When she came out, she said, "My high school friend is a divorce lawyer. A very busy woman, but she will see me today at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I may need copies of the photographic evidence you have." Shelley looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "I don't understand, Al. Why did you see me first before you burned Ellie?" I looked at her with sympathy. I knew what she had been through. I was going to shell. I was so full of hatred that I wanted to do it immediately. Shock and awe was to be my method of revenge. But I had doubts about what could be done. The pain this causes to you, me, and soon our children became almost unbearable for me. No, it's better that you deal with John first, get what's coming to you, and then I deal with this idiot. I didn't want to sue and leave you and Patsy with nothing. It would be wrong. I paused and saw that the logic of it all made sense to her. "Oh, Al, you've always been a Boy Scout. How could Ellie do this to you, and John do this to me and Patsy for so long? You must feel terrible like crap. I know how I feel." With that, she came up to me and hugged me tightly. "We'll both need sympathetic shoulders to cry on while we get through this." The hug was friendly, warm, but not sexual. We both sat there hugging each other and crying uncontrollably into each other's shoulders. I was acutely aware that this was the first compassionate human contact I had experienced since this whole mess began, and it was good. We both needed it. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but in the end, we naturally broke up. "I'll deal with Patsy," Shelley said. "I won't tell her the details of who John slept with behind our backs, but I will give enough information to make it clear that there is no doubt about his long-term infidelity. I will not jeopardize your plans, and I will not give Ellie any hint that I know he did this to her. That should be enough to make her feel violated." I left Shelley's house much more confident in my plan. Let Shelley deal with John first, get her share of their joint property, and pay up-front alimony without, if possible, alerting anyone else about who he's cheating with. This should also give me time to get my ducks in a row, so to speak. Attorney Shelley definitely knew her stuff. John was given it the very next day at work and in public. His colleagues were just getting ready for a meeting when a court representative called him very loudly. He probably shouldn't have done it, but after he announced, "You've been served," he added, "Your wife cannot live with a man who has had a long-term affair with another married woman who has 2 children with you." Amid the sighs and utter chaos of noise, the server disappeared. He was paid well to add that extra tidbit. Fortunately, because he might not be given another similar assignment for some time, given his indiscretion. Needless to say, John was treated like an outcast at work. Normally friendly co-workers would physically move if he sat next to them. No one spoke to him, except to answer a direct question related to work. His boss called him into his office and scolded him for his complete lack of moral ethics, and asked him why he should continue to work for the firm given his lack of judgment and reliability. His boss had been married for 45 years, and it was difficult for him to hide his contempt for the man who had so easily denigrated their marriage vows. He notified John that he would be fired immediately after the divorce was finalized. This gave John 2 months to try to find another job, which was almost impossible in an area where the gossip mill was thriving. Meanwhile, at the Webb's house, things were getting really interesting, to say the least. For some reason, repairing Ellie's car was taking an unusually long time. Every week the mechanic called and cited some technical reason why the car was not ready. This meant that Ellie benefited greatly from the local bus service. This also meant that the relationship between John and Ellie became unusually strained. For a couple accustomed to regular sex together, a non-stressful situation, every attempt to meet during lunch was fraught with danger. They were unable to go to their usual hotel. The receptionist did call about their no-show and informed John that the regular reservation would be canceled. This meant that their secret meetings had to take place in hospital storerooms. These rooms were cramped, smelled of all sorts of chemicals, and had the added danger of being opened at any moment by maintenance personnel. One day, they were actually surprised by a contract worker who opened the door and saw them. He quickly closed the door again, but opened it again 10 seconds later, recording a video on his phone. He managed to record 30 seconds where the actors' faces were clearly visible. The exit from this closet was almost instantaneous and was never repeated. The contract worker knew a nurse who knew another, and so on. The video was circulated freely, but apparently never made it onto Ellie or John's phones. However, it landed on me. This file was added to the others in my rogue folder. I, for my part, behaved coolly and at ease at home. Luckily, the routine was long established, and maintaining a semblance of normality was easier than I thought. The only difference was that there was absolutely no physical or intimate interaction between Ellie and me. I wondered how Ellie didn't comment on this change in our relationship, but it was obvious that Ellie's mind was too preoccupied with what was going on between Shelley and John. She was always on edge, obviously because of infrequent and dangerous connections with John at work. She must have wondered how no one knew that she was the other married woman mentioned in the divorce papers. Maybe she thought it was luck. Sometimes she was late at work, citing overtime. I knew she was using this time to be with John. I was seething with rage inside, but I hid my utter contempt for Ellie behind a facade of normality. Elaine suspected something was wrong and cornered me in the kitchen one day while I was preparing dinner. Ellie and James weren't home yet. "Dad, are you and Mom okay? I can't help but notice that you two are not exactly ordinary. Mom is on edge all the time, and you act so normally. This is not normal. I mean, look what's happening to Patsy's mom and dad. I wouldn't want something like that to happen to you guys. Their divorce will be finalized next week. Patsy cries all the time, and her father is hardly home. Their house is going to be sold. Patsy told me that her father had been having an affair for many years and that he had 2 more children with another married woman." I looked at her. Good old Lainey, I thought. A woman's intuition is alive and well in a teenage head. I answered as quietly as possible. "Of course, Lainey. You know that every couple has good times and hard times, right? If anything happens that you have to worry about, I'll be the first to let you know. Do you have a room where you can rush as usual at this time of day?" She left, but I knew that sooner or later I would have to tell her about her real genetic makeup. This was a task I was not looking forward to. How to tell the girl who has been your daughter for the last 19 years that this is not really true. Shelley and John's divorce was likely to be finalized next week. I knew this because I was in close contact with Shelley. Her lawyer told her that she should receive 80% of the total assets of their marriage. Shelley could very well start a new life. It was truly amazing how the process went so far that no one revealed who the woman from the saga was. This helped my plan a lot. The day came when John and Shelley finally got divorced. The house was sold and Shelley moved to a nearby town to find a new job and housing suitable for a single mother and her teenage daughter. Patsy accepted the situation and began spending many nights with Elaine. Patsy seemed to really lean on Elaine for support and was also very attached to her mother. If Shelley was not home when Patsy arrived home, she would immediately call to find out her whereabouts. Shelley and I continued to meet from time to time for friendly conversation. Our support for each other meant that we could weather the storm of deception with a relative degree of calm. The asshole lost his job, as he promised, and eventually found it low-paid random work. Now it's my turn to unleash the dragons. Ellie returned home from work that Wednesday afternoon as usual and was just walking into the bedroom to take a shower when I called out to her. "Ellie, I know what you and John were doing." Well, the reaction was camera-worthy. Ellie literally froze halfway up the steps. She slowly turned towards me, grabbing the balustrade. Her skin turned white, and she nearly tripped down the steps. "What do you mean?" she muttered. I didn't mean to be kind. The hatred I had hidden for so long came to the surface. I said, "I know you and John have been sleeping behind my back for at least 19 years. I screamed. Luckily, Elaine and James played sports. Throughout our entire married life, you have slept with another man and gave birth to 2 children with him, making me think that they were mine. The incredible disrespect and deception you showed me is beyond description. I won't even ask why, because there is no answer that would satisfy me. I've known about this for the last 3.5 months. Just so you know, you will be handed the documents at 8 tonight. I chose this time because James and Elaine will be home. I'll be leaving soon. My things are packed in the car. I'm not going back to this house of lies. If you need to contact me, do so through my lawyer, whose contact information will be on the divorce papers. James and Elaine will probably be eagerly awaiting your explanation of what you've been doing all these years. I was hoping to be the one to tell them what happened between you and John and what it meant for them, but I couldn't. If I did, I would definitely lose my temper and probably say and do things that would leave permanent scars on their souls. No, you started this mess. Now it's up to you to clean it up. I cannot bear to see the pain and betrayal that James and Elaine will experience." I shouted all this. This helped diffuse the anger. Ellie simply collapsed on the steps. She moaned, "No, no," repeating this over and over again, but I did not feel any pity for her. In fact, I headed to the kitchen and finished preparing dinner for James, Elaine, and her. I was surprisingly calm as I set the table and placed the 2 envelopes in their usual places. The letters inside each envelope were identical. They read, "Dear James Laney, it breaks my heart to put you in this situation. Believe me, if there was another way out where you wouldn't have to share my pain and humiliation, I would choose it. Please know that I love you both with all my heart. I have loved you since the moment you were born and have tried to help you develop and grow into the wonderful people you are. If you need to speak to me, as I sincerely hope you will, my new number is 223-786-712. Please do not give this number to your mother, as I cannot bear the thought of having anything to do with her case. I hope her explanations don't break your heart as much as they did mine. Once again, I love you unconditionally. Dad." I doubted the signature for a long time. I was not their genetic father, but I couldn't escape the truth that, in essence, I was their father and had been for their entire lives. Holding back tears and silently sobbing, I left the kitchen and went to the garage. Ellie was still sitting on the steps, holding her head in her hands. She was dead to me, but I hoped she would tell James and Elaine the truth. Now she had to pay for all the pain and sadness she and John had caused. I went to a small house that I had rented and prepared a week before. There was plenty of room for Elaine and James if they decided to come, but I didn't want to put any pressure on them. Unfortunately, this decision was now theirs. Tears flowed as I drove. I was really worried that I might get into an accident, but I got there in one piece. As I inserted the key into the lock to enter the new house, I heard a voice behind me. "I think you will enjoy having company, especially today." It was Shelley, good old Shelley, my support these last terrible months. I fell into her arms and we started crying again, just like 3 months ago in her house. All the accumulated emotions, anger, hatred, disbelief, self-doubt, questions, it all poured out, leaving me a trembling lump. My incoherent muttering must have seemed strange to Shelley, but she just led me into the house, sat me on the sofa, and continued to hug me. An unknown amount of time passed before I could say 2 words coherently. "Thank you, Shelley." She didn't let me say more. We made love. At 7 in the morning, we were woken up by 2 ringing phones. One was from Elaine, the other from Patsy. They've been trying to reach us since last night. I answered mine. Lainey, how are you, my darling? With sobs on the other end of the line, I understood everything I needed to know. I love you, Lainey. Please know this. I will always love you no matter what. Her sobs subsided a little. Dad, I love you. I'm so worried about you because of what Mom did. I don't know what to think about her. For me, she is partly the same mother I always knew, and partly she is a lying, cheating woman who deceived everyone who loved her. Can I see you? Where do you live now? Will I remain your daughter? I love you so much. I can't imagine life without you. James wants to see you too. Can we come now? She sobbed into the phone. I reassured her and promised to pick them both up within the hour. I didn't tell Elaine, but Shelley and I had a bit of cleaning to do. Patsy also wanted to see her mother and was very worried about her staying out of the house overnight. I picked up James and Elaine at our old house. They had backpacks and pillows. What kind of camping gear is this? I tried to defuse the situation. They both had red eyes, and it was obvious that they hadn't slept well. James replied, "We can't stay there," he said, pointing to the house, our old house. "It's strange, but I've already lost touch with what was our home, our refuge for so many years. Mom just cries all the time and talks to that bastard John for hours." This was the first time I heard James swear, but I decided not to reprimand him. I knew how he felt. "Come on, guys. We need to talk at my house." The road to my house was strange. James stared sullenly out the window the entire time while Elaine sobbed and wiped her eyes with endless tissues. They almost ran into the house, rushing for safety. Shelley was already there with Patsy. Patsy ran up to Elaine and hugged her tightly. "Looks like we're sisters now, huh? I've always wanted a sister, and I'm so glad it's you. It's a pity that under such circumstances." This brought tears to my eyes and more sobbing from all three girls in the room. James stayed away, so I just put my arm around his shoulders and hugged him tightly. "Everything will be okay, James," I tried to reassure him. The boy, who was just beginning to grow up, nodded and turned away, embarrassed by his tears. I hugged him tighter and whispered through my tears, "You will always be my son, James, no matter what. I'm proud of you and will always be there for you." He cried again and also answered in a whisper, "Thank you, Dad." My heart was breaking with pain, and we stood hugging for a long time. Shelley knew the moment was right, bless her heart, and said loudly, "Well, the family hugs and sons are over. Let's sit down to the table and enjoy a real family meal." The pizza and drinks she prepared allowed us all to take a break and collect our thoughts. This was followed by an easy day spent in the yard. No mention of the strange reasons for our gathering, only jokes about new brothers and sisters. Shelley and I marveled at how easily the children got along, but we were acutely aware that I was not their genetic father, and she was not James and Elaine's genetic mother. The looks of quiet sadness we exchanged were rare, and they were covered by the happiness we had recently shared. As often happens, night fell and Shelley and Patsy went home, leaving me alone with Elaine and James. "Have you told your mother that you are staying here?" I asked. Besides, I didn't want the police looking for missing children. "Yes," James replied. "We left her a note. We also asked her not to call us." Anger began to rise within him again. I knew that I would have to normalize his relationship with Ellie, otherwise it would destroy him. "Elaine, James, I know you're hurting. Believe me, my anger at this situation almost killed me. I seriously thought about ending this pain forever. But the only thing that kept me sane and focused, it was you two. What your mother did, she did mainly to me. It was she who promised me fidelity in marriage. She betrayed me the most. She is still your mother, and when things settle down and you have time to think about it, you will realize that she was a great mother to you. Her actions of betrayal and deceit did not concern her love and care for you until now. Don't waste all those years of happiness over this." They both listened. I saw this, but I also felt indecisiveness towards the mother. Elaine spoke first. "I understand, Dad. Can I still call you Dad? I'm just so angry about what she did to you. I feel your pain as much as I feel mine from her betrayal. Listen, both of you. I know I'm not your genetic father, but I was your father all along. My relationship with you will not change. My relationship with your mother, however, is a different story. I will always be by your side, just like before. Perhaps the living conditions will change a little, I grinned, but I will always be there for you, I paused. Yoda will come to the rescue, I thought. Now that's enough talking for today. Go ahead and choose which room will be yours if you decide to stay here. Unfortunately, it's not as chic and fancy as our old house, but I'm going to make it cozy. Now go, and good night. I love both of you. They settled in for the night. I needed to do this too. This emotional whirlwind hit my head and body hard. Besides, I'm not young anymore, and last night's adventures with Shelley also drained me to the limit. I wonder how Shelley is feeling. And that was my last conscious thought as my head hit the pillow and I drifted off into dreamland. The next morning over breakfast, whatever it was, I convinced them both to talk to Ellie. She was obviously very worried about them, but through a tense conversation, the children made it clear to her that they would return home only if this freak is not seen. They made it clear that they wanted nothing to do with John. I don't know if John lived with Ellie, but she agreed. I drove them home a little before noon and saw that there were no other cars nearby. The kids came inside after a lot of hugs and promises from me that I would always be there for them. Ellie began to leave the house as the children came inside. Al, we need. I didn't let her finish. I closed the window and quickly pulled out of the driveway. There was no desire to talk to this bitch, although I understood that sooner or later I would have to, for the sake of the children. I'll need to talk to my lawyer. Jane was very straightforward when I came to her. Al, as difficult as it may seem, John has every right to your children. And I say your children metaphorically. He is their genetic father, after all. No matter how unfair it may seem, the law is the law. Now Elaine is on her own. She's 19 and has the right to live with whoever she wants, if anyone at all. James is 14. The law requires him to have a guardian until he is 16 years old. You and Ellie will need to come to some kind of agreement, but she doesn't have to let you take care of James. She is his mother and John is his legal father. You are an outsider here. Of course, I knew all this, but hearing it out loud only increased my despair. She continued, let's let the divorce run its course, and then we'll see. The divorce proceeded as usual, and, as expected, child support was not requested. I received 40% of the family assets, which surprised Jane. She expected me to get much less. Elaine stayed with me, but sometimes spent the night at Ellie's. A quiet, tense truce was established between them. I was happy for Elaine, but still seething with rage that Ellie seemed to come out of this situation victorious. John lived in our old house with Ellie and James. He knew he shouldn't have been there when Elaine arrived. Somehow he managed to buy a luxurious apartment to live there when he wasn't living with Ellie. Elaine told me that James had become quite a recluse, staying in his room almost all the time. He didn't eat with Ellie or John and only came out of his shell when Elaine was around. His relationship with Ellie was full of disgust. He could barely be polite to her. He spoke only when asked directly and always answered in monosyllables, not commenting words. He didn't talk to John at all. Combined with the usual teenage rebellion, it was like a ticking time bomb. I'm really worried about him, Dad, Elaine confided to me one day. If he doesn't calm down soon, he'll do something he'll regret for the rest of his life. He gets involved with a bad crowd at school and becomes a thorn in the side of all the teachers. My friends who are still in school say that he quit studying completely. What can we do, Dad? I looked at my daughter with sadness. Lainey, I tried to do everything I could, but the damn law is not on our side. Legally, he is not my child, and I have no rights to him. But I'll tell you what plans I have, I said with a conspiratorial glint in my eyes. Elaine listened and smiled as I laid out my plan to punish the bastard. He'll feel all the pain, and by the time I'm done he might want to leave town forever. I found out a few things in a rather cunning way, although not so cunning, because the private detective was generously paid. Apparently, Bastard John wasn't very open about all his assets during his divorce from Shelley. He had an offshore account and transferred money there for years. It became a little clearer how he was able to buy that apartment so easily after his divorce from Shelley. The detective was unable to determine where the money came from. He opened this account with a decent starting capital of $200,000, a gift from some distant relative. He never mentioned this to the courts. The detective, however, was able to determine that the current balance was approximately $1 million. And that bastard lives off Ellie. I was seething with rage. Surely he didn't tell Ellie about this either. No wonder he could afford regular bookings for their love nest for so many years without raising Shelley's suspicions. The detective also found the name under which he maintained this account to confuse investigators during the divorce. James Long. What a bastard. This private detective was worth his weight in gold. I was tormented by questions about how this private detective was able to find out all this. The detective also suggested that he was likely able to access the account through a computer or smartphone since he never visited foreign bank offices. He also had a safe deposit box at a local bank, but rarely visited it. It was getting interesting. Elaine was ready for anything and probably wanted to punish the bastard even more than I did. Elaine was on a mission. She needed to figure out how the bastard accessed his lucrative offshore accounts. She started spending more time with Ellie, which meant the bastard was home less and less. This began to cause him inconvenience, since every time he left, he was forced to take all his personal belongings with him, including his computer, etc. Over time, he relaxed and left his laptop with Ellie. This was the very moment we were waiting for. Elaine called me as soon as she realized she was lucky. "Dad, he left and I have his laptop. What should I do? I don't know his password or anything." I replied, "I'll pick you up in 15 minutes, but make sure your mother doesn't know you're leaving, otherwise the bastard will come back." She told Ellie she was going to her room and didn't want to be disturbed for 3 hours. That was enough. We had about 2.5 hours to destroy the bastard. Elaine met me around the corner from our old house, and we headed straight to the address I had found a few weeks ago. I didn't know the owner of the address, but I contacted him via email about the job I wanted to do. I knocked on the door and was answered by an unshaven, pimply guy who must have been about 20 years old. "What do you want, old man?" he answered through the slightly open door. "To hell with the old man," I answered. "My name is Al, and I organized this a while ago. Are we in or not?" He seemed hesitant, but when he saw Elaine behind me, he reluctantly let me in. "So, can you do what you said, or are you full of crap?" I asked. "Calm down, old man," he replied. "Give me an hour, and this laptop will sing for us." He took the laptop and connected USB cables and HDMI cables to it. Why, I didn't know. The only thing I knew was that it promised to remove any password from the hard drive. That's why I'm here. He wasn't cheap, but if he had succeeded, my plan to punish the bastard would have been successful. While he muttered something under his breath, Elaine and I looked around the apartment. This was not a life I could lead. The apartment was in disarray. Pieces and pieces of equipment were scattered everywhere. The remains of the pizza were lying around in different places around the apartment. The only place where it was comfortable to sit was in front of a huge set of monitors. The screens currently showed the bastard's laptop screensaver, as well as some scrolling code. This went on for about 40 minutes until the technician shouted, "Bingo, we're inside." The screensaver was replaced by the bastard's home screen. We immediately went to his web browser and checked his bookmarks. Of course, hidden 2 levels down was the Bank of Greece tab. We clicked on it. A splash screen for logging into the site appeared, and the scrolling code appeared again on the techie's screens. 50 minutes later, the screensaver filled in with symbols on its own. We got his login. I quickly logged in and found the account details. Of course, there were $900,000 in the account with some small change. I transferred all but $10 into an account I already had. The account was in the name of S. Heathers. I wonder if he'll take the hint. We continued searching the hard drive and found the details of the safe. Having memorized them, I paid the technician and left. We had limited time left to get the bastard's laptop back. Elaine returned home and put the laptop back in its place. She then informed Ellie that she was leaving again. We waited around the corner and saw the bastard drive up to Ellie's house right after Elaine left. God, how fast, I thought. He must have been around somewhere. Returning to my house, I pondered what happened. The bastard must have been involved in some shady dealings to have that kind of money. He was just an ordinary accountant. Questions about how and why he hid money abroad while living an ordinary suburban life filled my mind. There must be a reason why he hid all this. But hid it from whom? The IRS had already made deals with most foreign banks to prevent tax evasion, so he had to know that sooner or later it would be discovered by the government. If my private investigator could find it so easily, so could the government. This required more research. Perhaps the safe contained the answers. Once again, Elaine came to the rescue. I was working full-time again, so my time for investigations was limited. She went to the bank in the city where the safe was located. She had all the security passwords to the bastard's laptop, so she hoped that would be enough. I'm sure if it were me, the average man, they would be asked a million questions. But Elaine was a beautiful girl, almost 20 years old. She dressed to the nines and knew how to show off. My daughter grew up, and I felt a pang of regret for the loss of her childhood. But it worked. She was able to persuade the security and bank employees by pretending that her stepfather was in the hospital. The fact that she had all the passwords seemed to calm them down enough. When she opened the safe, there were only a few accounting journals and an envelope containing small items inside. Not wanting to tempt fate, she quickly put them in her bag and left the bank. She smiled at the guard. The contents of the safe were laid out on my kitchen table when I returned from school that afternoon. Elaine was there looking pale and very anxious. "Dad, you won't believe what was in the safe. Here, look." She put 2 passports in my hands. Opening the first one, I saw that it was the bastard's passport, but in the name Bruce Williams. It was an Australian passport. The second passport contained a regular photo of Ellie, but in the name Mrs. Ann Williams, also an Australian passport. What the... I remembered that my daughter was nearby. Looks like the bastard was planning an escape. He was going to disappear with your mother, Elaine. Here's another thing: 2 Qantas tickets from Los Angeles to Sydney, one way, and the flight is scheduled for 2 weeks in advance. Was your mother aware of this? She did stupid things, but I don't think she would just leave you and James. There's something wrong here. Elaine was stunned by these revelations, but continued to examine the contents of the envelope. "Dad, look at this photo. This is the bastard when he was about my age. Look." I looked at the photo and immediately recognized one of the people. This was during our university years. In the photo, there was a bastard who looked very well groomed and confident. Next to him was another student whom I remembered. Suddenly, it dawned on me who it was. Damn it, my daughter was forgotten for a moment. It's Jimmy Lamont. He was the son of the famous, or rather infamous, gangster Al Lamont. Nobody liked him at the university, so the bastard was his friend. He must have hidden it very well, because I never saw any sign of it. By the way, I never noticed him, and your mother being close at university. God, what a naive bastard I was. After reviewing the contents of the envelope, I focused on the magazines. They looked like regular ledgers, boring. The records showed regular cash deposits and withdrawals in the name J. Lamont. He must have done the books for that criminal, I said. The second magazine was more mysterious. It only showed deposits, except for one large withdrawal recently. Apartment, I thought. The name of this account was the same one we had just emptied. James Long, we just emptied this account. Either the bastard was getting paid $10,000 regularly for his secret accounting services, or he stole money from Jimmy's account. Either way, the pieces of the puzzle began to come together. Elaine, we disturbed a hornet's nest. This could lead to a lot of trouble if we get caught, but especially for the bastard and your mother. Now, I'm not worried about the bastard's fate, but your mother is another matter. Although I hate her with all my soul, I do not wish her death. This crime family is known for dealing with problems harshly. We need to be very careful. Elaine turned pale again. "Do you think they know it's us?" she whispered. I had the same question. I hope no, I answered. I knew we needed to cover our tracks, and quickly. I took the magazines to school and asked my assistant to make 2 copies. I also made copies of passports. Elaine returned the originals to the safe. However, I left Ellie's fake passport and her plane ticket. This time, the guard smiled at Elaine and waited impatiently for her arrival. This time, he was unlucky. Elaine and I discussed what to do next. Her mother was in great danger. If people Lamont will find out what the bastard has been stealing from him, the bastard's days will be numbered. Unfortunately, Ellie could have gotten hurt too. She needed to get away from him as soon as possible so as not to be associated with him. Unlikely, I thought. They slept and lived a hidden life for so many years. The bastard had to go, and Ellie had to disappear. 1 copy of the magazines was to be delivered to Al's mailbox. Ellie needed to disappear under her new name as soon as possible. Now how to get her to agree. I called her. She answered the phone after a long pause, probably wondering why I was calling, given that I had stubbornly refused to answer her calls since our divorce. Allan, what a surprise, she said hesitantly. Ellie, we need to talk urgently. This concerns James, I lied. No questions asked now. Meet me at the Coffee Bean in 15 minutes. I hung up before she could ask her questions. When she entered the cafe, she looked pale. What happened, Allan? Is there something wrong with James? What has he done? I motioned for her to sit down. Without saying a word, I placed her fake passport open on the table. She looked at it and, seeing her photo, quickly looked at me. What is this, Allan? What kind of games do you play? This is not my passport. Where did you get it? I waited for her to finish asking questions. When she fell silent, I placed 2 plane tickets on the table. These were the originals. Looks like the bastard wanted you two to disappear, Mrs. Williams. She turned even paler. What? How? I will never leave my children. I know they've been unbearable since we divorced Allan, but I still love them. They are also John's children. He wouldn't just leave them like that. When she said the last sentence, she bit her tongue. This was the first time she openly admitted to me that the children were not mine. Are you really defending this cheating bastard? My anger began to rise. This lying, insidious bastard who, together with you, has been deceiving me all these 19 years. You expect me to believe he has any morals? I was screaming at that moment, and other cafe patrons were openly looking at us. Ellie had never seen me so angry, and it scared her. I'm leaving, she stated. When she started to get up, I put the accounting books on the table. What is this? She asked. More fake documents. I suggested that she study them carefully. She immediately understood what kind of documents they were. She was always responsible for our finances. Ellie, I said more calmly, looks like the bastard was deceiving you too. He stole from those who shouldn't have. It's a kind of justice for me, but it doesn't bring me any comfort. This wonderful man, John, also known as a bastard, not only slept with you behind my back all these years, but also stole from Al Lamont all this time. I'm sure Al will soon find out what he's been doing, and if you're with him or near him, you could be in great danger. You can be used and thrown in some Mexican hole or even buried in the desert. I gave her time to digest this information. I didn't think it was possible, but she turned even more pale. Now the other cafe patrons were really worried. The waitress, seeing Ellie's condition, came up to us. Are you all right, miss? Shall I bring you something? Ellie didn't answer, and the waitress walked away, embarrassed. Ellie, I won't beat around the bush. You need to disappear to Australia immediately, using fake passports and plane tickets. Disappear without a trace. The Lamonts know you've been with the bastard for a long time. Again that surge of bile at the thought of how many years these two had lied to me. You must give me custody of James and put the house, our old house, in trust for James and Elaine. I have documents here. I put the last yellow envelope on the table. Make no mistake, Ellie, I'm not offering you a way out because of my feelings for you. No, that's not true. I have feelings for you. She looked at me in surprise. Allan, I don't. She began. I interrupted her. The feelings I have for you are hatred, pure, undisguised hatred and disgust. How you had the audacity to do this to me, to our marriage, to our children, I will never understand. You treated the love and respect I had for you with complete contempt. No, I'm giving you a way out because you are James and Elaine's mother, and I love them immensely. They deserve to have their mother alive and not dead. I don't care what happens to the bastard. I hope they leave him in the desert. Now sign the papers and disappear from the country and from our lives. Last chance. Ellie took the documents, read them, and signed them. Allan, this means I have no rights to my children, she sobbed. Welcome to the club, bitch. Now you know how I felt when I found out about your long-term deception. I got up and left the cafe. The patrons breathed a collective sigh of relief, but continued to stare at the sobbing woman sitting at the table. James came to me the next day with all his things. Hello, Father. What's happening? Mom left a note that I needed to come here and stay for a long time. Most of her things were gone. Looks like she's not going to come back. I looked at James, my James, and smiled. It's okay, son. I'll explain everything later. Go unpack. Elaine ran inside, hugged her brother, and helped him unpack. 2 days later, news appeared in the newspapers about the sudden disappearance of a recently divorced local resident, John Jefferson. It was said that he had some connections with a famous criminal figure. The investigation continued. On the next page was an article about a mysterious house fire. We knew this address. This was our old house. The fire appears to have been the result of a botched robbery that left the house in total destruction before it was set on fire. James and Elaine continued to live with me until Elaine went to university. Coincidentally, Patsy, her sister, also enrolled there. Shelley sold her house and moved in with me. We were glad that James often went to bed with headphones listening to his favorite music. The money stayed with us offshore until required. Teachers don't earn much. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.